Hello and welcome to the Time Is Now podcast. My name is Jody Albert Moss and this is episode 8. I would like to talk a little bit about the area where I live and where I was born. I was born in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, which is located between Niagara Falls and Toronto. It's on Lake Ontario, so it's kind of in the horseshoe. They call it the Golden Horseshoe, and we're right in the middle there. So since I was very young, I always knew there was more going on here than people were talking about. You know, I've said for a very long time that energetically, there's more going on here than Sedona, Arizona. The difference is, areas like Sedona, people have known about for a very long time, so they go there. They pray there, they do ceremony there, they work with the energies. So over the years, it intensifies. In our area, in this part of Ontario, which is technically called Halton, Ontario, incorporates Hamilton, Oakville, Burlington, Georgetown, that whole area, there's a lot going on here. My traditional teachers have referred to major energy centers located almost every 20 miles, but the difference is they've been forgotten about. People don't use them. People don't do their ceremony there. They don't pray there. They don't meditate there. So the energies have dissipated, but they haven't disappeared. They're still here. So these energies have basically quieted down from lack of use. I talk about many of my experiences with these energies in my book, The Time Is Now, which is available on my website, jodyalbertmoss.com, and the experiences I've had here in locations like Mount Nemo, Rattlesnake Point, and the Niagara Escarpment in general. I remember many, many years ago, back when the Hale-Bopp comet was, you could see it. It only comes around, I think, every 40 years or something. But it was at that time, long ago, that I was a member of, you could call it a paranormal investigation group. And we used to go out at night and do night watches and look for UFOs and energies and all kinds of interesting things. Well, my intuitive voice spoke to me at this time when this Hale-Bopp comet was coming through. And it said, go down to the shores of Lake Ontario and look out over the water. So the other members of the team, they didn't believe me. They didn't know. I had eventually convinced them that we should go check out this new location. So we found a park. We went to the park and it was dark. So we were doing a meditation in this park and some energy work to try and enhance the experience. And I looked over my friend's shoulder and there over the lake were the orbs. Now don't forget, this was over 30 years ago. This was before people were really even talking about orbs. And we were now seeing them over Lake Ontario. So what they would do is you wouldn't see them flying through the sky, but you would see them materialize about, if you were looking over the lake, I'd say about 6 inches above the lake. And then they would materialize and you would watch them come down till they hit the surface of the water and they would go into Lake Ontario. So this was quite interesting. So we photographed some of them and we watched some of them. I personally didn't photograph. Other members of the teams did. I didn't like that whole feel. It was like it wasn't the proper exchange of energy. So we continued to go down to that park and watch them over and over. We eventually found another location on the north shore of Lake Ontario in Oakville where we could go down there and be a lot more private. And the best time that we found to see these orbs was just before dusk. You know, it starts to get a little bit dark, but you can still see. And if you looked out over the lake, you would see these orbs. And it's very important that when you're doing this, don't look at land on the other side of the lake, but look out over the open waters where there's no distraction from lights or car headlights or anything like that. So my experience with these orbs over a period of time is that they actually have a consciousness, a presence, an energetic presence. And you can communicate with them through thought, through meditation, through energy work. But you have to be pure of heart. If you want to go and see the orbs and you take a bunch of camera equipment, you want to record them and try and prove it to other people, it doesn't work that way. At least it didn't work that way for me. You know, as long as we went there, we were mindful and respectful, the orbs showed themselves. And I've noticed that this happens at my house too. When we're outside doing energetic work, like I have an Arcturian ethereal pyramid that I made, and we can take it out and make it big enough that you could put 15 people in it. When we do that kind of work with toning and rattling and drumming, the orbs show up. It's like they're attracted to the energy. They want to be part of it. But you have to be very mindful and respectful. And you can't have any expectations, you know. We put conditions on what we're going to experience by what we believe, what we think, and the thoughts we have in our minds. That's why I always say meditation is so important. To practice mindfulness, empty mind, practice empty mind, and just be receptive to the energies that are around us, because they all take different forms. Orbs are just one form of the energies that are around us. And I believe the orb energies have been here for a very long time. Very long. And I believe they're interdimensional. So they kind of find little doorways, and I believe the surface of the water of Lake Ontario is a doorway down into a different reality, a different frequency, a different vibration. So that's an interesting thought, something that deserves a little more contemplation. Because I believe all around us there are these doorways, whether it's in the forest, whether it's in the rock, whether it's in Lake Ontario. And there are old stories that I've heard. I've been around, I've talked to elders, I've talked to people who have been on this land for a very long time. And some of them have stories about an island that used to be in Lake Ontario about 400 years ago. Where did that island go? I don't believe it just disappeared. I don't believe it sank. I believe energies consciously worked to phase that island into another reality. So again, if you go down and you look over Lake Ontario and the conditions are right, maybe you'll see the island. In my book, The Time Is Now, I actually share a guided visualization that the orbs shared with me. How they took me on a journey, how I actually stepped into an orb and they took me around and returned me safely. There's so many possibilities. All we have to do is believe. Believe that there's more going on than 9-to-5 jobs and money and the lifestyle most of us have been conditioned to believe is actually a distraction. So I always say, just stop. Be mindful. And be aware of what's around us. Nowadays, with the internet and everybody being able to post pictures, a lot of people are posting pictures of orbs. They see them in their homes. They see them around their properties. As the energies increase, as we move from the 3D to the 4D to the 5D and up, frequencies increase, vibrations increase. The veil, if you want to call it that, the wall between our reality and the realities that are around us, in which I believe these realities overlap, mix up, and by tuning with our mind, we can see through them, we can go through them. Well, as this process increases and the vibrations increase, it seems the orbs are becoming more and more visible. It's almost like they really want to get our attention. It's just, are we receptive to it? Can we see it? A lot of times they show up on when you take a picture with your phone. They'll show up, but some people actually see them flying around their rooms in their house, and you can actually sense them as well. You can sense that consciousness. It's like they're trying to get your attention. I believe it's part of the process. As things vibrate faster, more and more of this will happen. More and more connections will be made. More and more observations. And it'll get to a point where it'll just be common. And the more of us that communicate with each other, talk about our experiences, we become more comfortable. We feel safe. So that's why I'm sharing my experiences that I've had in my life, in the hopes that maybe you might reach out to a friend and say, hey, have you noticed this? It's key. It's the way to the future. We have to come together, be united, not just our physical bodies and people, but we need to unite with the orbs, the energies, the angels, if that's what you want to call them. We're all one. We live in a town called Milton, Ontario, Canada. It's about 15 minutes north of Oakville, Ontario. And we do host guided visualizations, and I do teach. I have classes and workshops. So if you're ever in the area, reach out. You can email me from my website and stop in. You know, Catherine sells crystals. I have my pyramid and some other really interesting things here. If it speaks to you, look us up. Until then, have a fantastic day, and thank you for joining me.